Jody McDonald and John McMullen are your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. The countdown is on for the next Eagles showdown. That would be the first one this year against the New York Giants. And pop up on the schedule till week 14. And they play the Giants twice in the last 4 weeks of the season. Will the last game even matter? We know this one does for sure to both teams. Eagles want to continue to win and cement the best overall record in the NFL. Giants are in the playoffs as of right now. It's been 5 years since the Giants are in the playoffs, and they know they have to continue to win, or they could get squeezed out, and their 6-1 start can go right by the wayside if they can't finish the season up strong. Back-to-back divisional games, Eagles this week, Commanders next week. I've been a non-Daniel Jones fan since the day he was drafted, John. I thought the Giants well overdrafted him, understood that they needed a quarterback. It doesn't mean you force feed the pick. He's played better this year than he has in previous seasons, at least for me. His rookie year, he would have the unbelievable up and downs. He'd have a really good game, and then he'd be really bad the next week. But Giant fans clung to those very good games. He's just never done anything for me as far as a franchise quarterback goes. He's not terrible, but he's just not good enough to be a team. If you've got Super Bowl aspirations, he's not the quarterback that's going to get you there. And the Giants chose not to pick up his option before the year started. How would you evaluate the year that Daniel Jones has had? Has he cemented himself as the Giants quarterback of the future? Are they going to play it year by year? How do you think they go forward with Daniel Jones in New York?
Boy, it's tough because, he has, I think, played as well as he ever has this season. But I agree with you. I don't think ultimately he can reach the level where you want to ultimately go. So it becomes, almost a purgatory type situation where, all right, can I do better than Daniel Jones? Probably not. But he's not good enough. So I think that's the difficulty the Giants find themselves in. I think you're right as far as the overdrafting. And you and I talk about this a lot. I mean, this is the 6th overall pick. So there's expectations with being the 6th overall pick that you don't have, say, if you're a 2nd-round pick. Maybe he would be viewed in a different chamber if he was a 2nd-round pick, but he wasn't. It's the number 6 overall pick in the draft. So you're expecting this superstar quarterback, and he's not that. Can he develop into an Alex Smith type? That's where I look about it. You think about Alex Smith as the number 1 overall pick. That guy, when he figured it out, he won a lot of games, but he won it, game manager, which is often a dirty word. More athletic than people gave him credit for. But everybody was always looking. San Francisco was winning all those games with Jim Harbaugh. And they were saying, but we have this ceiling with Alex Smith. And the minute he got hurt, they went to Colin Kaepernick. They won. They made a run to the Super Bowl, and they were. Turns out Jim Harbaugh was right. They were far more explosive. Then he goes elsewhere and he wins a bunch of games That's sort of my comp for Daniel Jones, that, if he continues to get better, maybe he can be an Alex Smith guy who can win a lot of games, but it's probably not going to get you to where you want to go at the end of the day.
I think Giant fans love what you just said, because if he's the next Alex Smith, he's going to be replaced by either a Colin Kaepernick or a Patrick Mahomes. They'd be okay with either one of those two in New York if they could get that guy.
You got to find that guy. You got to find that guy.
Yeah,
but that's, it's really hard to find that guy. It's really hard to find that. But the good news is if he develops to that, maybe you get to the point where you win a lot of games. Well, you can look for it. You can look for the quarterback, Where you get in trouble, as you mentioned, when you say, I need a quarterback and I'm going to take a quarterback no matter what. If you don't like the player, don't take the stinking player. And just go about winning games in a different way, which is why I bring up Alex Smith.
And, oh, by the way, to help make our point, both John and I agree that he's playing maybe better than he's ever played before. He is the 17th ranked quarterback in the National Football League if you use passer rating, which, again, with passer rating, not the perfect way to judge a quarterback, but the best way to judge a quarterback. He's 17th. That's what he is. He's a middle-of-the-road quarterback in the National Football League. Previously, he'd been down in the 20s, so he's improved, but he's still in the second half of the quarterback rankings in the National Football League, and that doesn't get you where you ultimately want to get to as a Super Bowl. Do you think the reason that he's slightly improved is Brian Daboll? That he's got the best coach that he's ever had since he's been there with the Giants, which, oh, by the way, this is the third coach he's played for in 5 years. Do you think Daboll is the guy that he's ticked up a little bit this year, the reason why?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that that's helped. And Mike Kapka as well, who's doing a good job there from all indications as the offensive coordinator and the play caller. I mean, coaching's a big part of it. We saw it here with Jalen Hurts. You know, talent is always number one, but it helps when you're in the situation. Maybe, you know, Andy Reid is the best example of this, and the fact that if you get with Andy Reid, there's a good chance you're going to reach your ceiling as a quarterback. And there are certain teams that can't develop quarterbacks, can't utilize quarterbacks correctly. I'm worried about Justin Fields in Chicago. I haven't seen any evidence that they can figure anything out there except, hey, go run the football and bail us out. You know, that's not what I want around my quarterback. Daniel Jones now has a much better ecosystem around him, and that's, you know, a big reason why he's having his best year in my estimation, and I would think most people's estimation. And remember, Jody, they don't have receivers around them, so there's more room for improvement as they generate better receivers. But this entire time, though, they got to be understanding ultimately, and I think they do understand, and that's the reason they didn't give him the 5th-year option. We got to get better at quarterback as well. But if you can't, and you build up better around him, I think you can win games with Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll and Mike Kapka. Of course, you might not even have Mike Kapka after this season. That's how quick something like that can happen. He's going to get some head coaching interviews at least. He's already been in the mix in the past.
And I would give the Giants, I'm not fearful of the Giants this week, but next year could be a year that they make a little bit of a jump because they took some salary cap hits this year, one of which was letting James Bradbury walk. Thank you very much, Eagles say, for them doing that. The general manager will have a little bit more flexibility to be able to add. They knew that they had to go a little bit more on the cheap. Howie Roseman goes out and gets A.J. Brown. The Giants had 3 wide receivers named Pete, none of which that I know. So, the GM didn't have as much flexibility to upgrade the weapons around Daniel Jones this year. He'll have more flexibility to do so next year.
Yeah, and that was part of the reboot, and that's part of the reason why before the season I said, well, to me, there's 2 clear teams that are just, you know, doing that, hitting control alt to delete and saying, we're not ready. And it was Chicago and the Giants. And I think it's really evident in Chicago. But Brian Daboll's been so good as a head coach, and this team's 7-4-1. And I don't know of anybody who thought the Giants were going to be in the conversation this late in the season. So, and Nick Sirianni talked about it again, his respect and admiration for Brian Daboll. So, you know, I think the Giants, after years of churning their wheels with Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur and Steve Spagnuolo and Joe Judge, I think they finally got it right at head coach.
You're not afraid of Richie James stepping up and beating up on the Eagles cornerbacks this week, huh?
I am not, nor to the former Eagle Marcus Johnson. Not afraid of that either. Their best receiver is probably Darius Slayton, not probably right now. Wando Robinson was doing some nice things as a rookie, but He's injured now, so they don't have him. Kenny Galladay's been a disaster as one of those Gettleman signings. Yeah, they don't have, and remember, you're not only having perhaps the worst wide receiver core in the NFL, you're going against perhaps the best cornerback duo in the NFL. That's not a matchup I'd like for the Giants.
That's why it is imperative that the Eagles get the ball first. If you win the coin flip, take that ball, Coach Nick.
That ain't
put
happening.
the analytics aside.
Forget
March
about
it
it.
right down the field and get the Giants into their passing.
You got to
mode,
hope they lose. You got to hope they lose because that's the only way they're getting the ball first.
There are two ways that you can get the ball first. One is the Giants give it to you. Number two is you take it. Think about it, Coach Nick. All right, coming up next, we're going to get Pat Leonard up. He covers the Giants day in, day out basis, does an outstanding job for the Daily News up in New York. He'll do so for us here on Birds 365 next.